So the other piece that's super important if you're wanting to introduce conflict into your team and in a healthy way into your processes, probably the key factor in all of this is not only yourself being the driving factor in promoting conflict, because whoever's leading this charge also has to be the one that's like, we need to fight about this, like we need to actually discuss this. Don't just like agree because it's the first thing that someone said. But the key piece is making sure that every single member of that team is holding each other accountable both in that meeting and outside of that meeting. So when I say in the meeting, I specifically mean we definitely have conflict in ad hoc meetings, in department specific meetings or whatever, but specifically where we all kind of duke it out with each other is our weekly leadership meeting, and it's where a lot of strategies are really talked about at the very beginning stages of, should we do this, and what about this, and what are the consequences of us taking this action, and we kind of all poke holes and offer different alternatives. And it's in that meeting specifically where I need the rest of leadership to hold every single member, including me, accountable to not just agreeing and committing, to being okay with disagreeing and committing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's hard because sometimes you will find a point where like everyone already was on the same page,
Right.
and so you
And that
can't
definitely
really,
happened.
and you can't always force it.
No. But
But
I also want to pose a different perspective to conflict, even the word and what that could actually look like in
sure.
conversation. So you hear the word conflict and I bet you're picturing in your head what this means, like bickering or fighting, or
Sure.
I think that's a bad idea and here's why, or whatever else, right?
Yeah, no.
But truly, like, conflict can also be a very positive, opportunistic posing of a question. And I'll give you an example. So, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, many weeks ago, by the time you're listening to this, we had, I think it was a leadership meeting where we were just opening up the table of what are avenues that we haven't pursued in order to increase revenue in existing things that we already have within our company. What is maybe something that we've kind of forgotten about, or we should go all in on, or we should try? And of course, Abby and I's natural thing to do is like not think of something new as in inventing something, but like trying something new, a new, different way, like new, right? And we had someone on our team who was like, um, y'all have this podcast, the one you're listening to right now. And to me, per the analytics that you share, it's like our best performer, and we're getting in front of the most people, the most ear holes, and it's growing the fastest. So, like, why aren't we doing something more with that? Have you thought about? And they listed a whole bunch of ideas. And it definitely steered us in a direction that we hadn't like readdressed, even though we've definitely looked at monetizing the show before and what that could look like, but it had kind of like gone to the sidelines. And just one kind of posing question of like, how about this? Within a week, we had an entire project outlined. We had actually, this is the magic of like leaning into what's already working and just like kind of saying it out loud. Without us even pursuing, we had something within a couple of days in our own inbox to help the process that we didn't anticipate whatsoever. They came to us. And I'm not saying like the magic of the universe opened up when like,
No, and often it would literally, if that discussion happened, it would have been like our ops person wouldn't have even like passed it on.
absolutely.
It wasn't that like the connection still wouldn't have been made. It's that we wouldn't have spent the time or energy on it, but
Exactly.
because it was like a current topic of conversation, it
We were
was
like,
like, oh, this
oh,
is serendipitous.
mm-hmm.
And so those things will happen, and often I mean, maybe you guys don't get as much email as we do, but like there's often opportunity that's just sitting and waiting for you
Yeah.
anyway. And I don't know about you, but it's really easy to put blinders on and see just what you're tunnel focused
Yeah.
on. And then when someone else opens up your periphery, you're like, oh, this thing over here. Oh, this thing over here.
Mm-hmm.
I'd almost forgotten this exists in my own
Yeah.
universe.
That's
Like,
exactly what happened.
and so I don't know. I think, and then it's never one person's success either, because you're creating this environment that allows for people to push on and push back, and also be a part of the process at more incremental stages
Yeah.
instead of one person owning the whole thing,
Yep.
you will find that when you have wins, like, you're not like, oh my God, it's so and so. Like,
Right.
it's more of a collective team thing, which is really exciting because it takes multiple people to get across the finish line.
Yeah.
And I know for us, it's critical that we have team players, and we are more willing than ever to look at people's skill sets and identify which piece should they own rather than assuming someone should own the entire
Yeah.
process.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, goes back to collaboration where we all have and know our zone of genius and want to put it in the project where it makes sense. So I encourage you to not only pick up this book, The Five Dysfunctions of a Team. It's a really easy read. They go through obviously the five dysfunctions like a pyramid of sorts, and it talks about the building blocks of what it takes for your team to tackle those steps. And what's really cool is they talk about like the step that you want to be and then the opposing of that step. So when you're not living in that value or the function, this is the dysfunction. And it's really cool to see the parallel of like, oh, we kind of live in that one but not this one, but they all have to work together in order to reach like a team that's working really well together in a healthy way. And it really pointed out for me that arguing is not bad. That's absolutely my mindset going into most things is conflict is bad and argument is bad. And I am also, as an Enneagram 3 by nature, wanting to be the most efficient at things, which in my brain equals the fastest at things. And to me, spending the time going through conflict or not making a decision today is the opposite of what I want to be doing, because I just want to be like, we already made a decision, let's just go, like let's just do it. But hearing other people's perspectives truly, like, even though, and we haven't taken the disagreement offline, but there are many things that are brought up in leadership meetings that Abby and I then as the CEOs will sit and be like, when someone said this, like, what does that look like for you? What is that? What if we did that? What does that mean? And as the founders, the
Yeah, it doesn't
visionaries,
mean you still don't have to have
right?
additional discussions
But
as
we're
the
like
owner.
big picture scheming of like, if we try that idea on for size, what does that mean? And how does that feel for you? And what does it mean? Because ultimately, everything for us comes back to building and designing and living in a life first business. And the only way that we can do that is by trying things on for size, even mentally, like metaphorically, and seeing how it literally feels when we talk about having those discussions. Are we excited? Are we overwhelmed? Are we anxious? And we'll ask each other, were you anxious because you're nervous, like nervous excited, or like doom nervous? Like which one is it for you? And a lot of that is subconscious conversations that we have learned to have with each other, but that we're trying to train our team to identify. A lot of our business is shifted and move forward through intuition and through what feels in alignment and what's going to enable us and our team to live life first. And that's why those things are put through that filter. That's why the conflict is encouraged on the team, because ultimately that's the value that we need to live in. And so the book I highly recommend. Encouraging conflict in a healthy way, I highly recommend. There were definitely some like rules that we set up at the beginning and some kind of policies that we put in place. Some of those we shared with you today. But I can't wait to hear your conflicts. Hear you guys
Yeah, in a
solve
good
those.
way. Tell us how it goes. And I'd love to hear those of you who decide to read the book, what your biggest takeaway is. Definitely send us a DM. We'd love to hear from you, hear more about how you're running your team, where you're running into issues with your team.
Yeah.
We'd love to help. Send us a note over at Boss Project on Instagram and we'll chat soon.